In this video, we'll be checking out our top 5 support dinos from ARK Survivor Descended. These shall all be custom and original modded creatures available on the CurseForge platform. And if you'd like to see more of these top 5 videos, don't forget to hit subscribe and follow the channel. Starting off at number 5, we have the Reclamation's Vastatyrannus by AmalgamanicGaming. This Vastatyrannus is essentially a roided up and very angry Eutyrannus. Just like the classic UT, the Vastatyrannus sports both a Courage Roar and a Fear Roar, on top of his regular melee attacks dealing bleed damage, and the Fear Roar also being accompanied by a Fire Breath, and one that hits incredibly hard, which comes as both a perk and a severe risk. The Vastatyrannus is a massively tanky creature, and when brought into a boss encounter, means it has a very minimal chance of dying and can provide the excellent support that the rest of your creatures need to deal more damage to the boss. In addition to it being a high damage dealer itself, but at the cost of not being able to use his Fire Breath because it does deal friendly damage to allied targets, and the Fire Breath hits stupendously hard, so on the one hand, you could use the Vastatyrannus to deal massive damage to the boss and it adds by itself, but on the other hand, you really need to make sure you aim that Fire Breath away from your own allies. Or otherwise, worst case scenario, it's just a much more powerful Eutyrannus, which is why we've delegated it to number 5 on this list because of the risk, but when saddled and ridden, the Vastatyrannus works as a much stronger UT. At number 4 on this list, we have the Vectispinus by Tristan's Modding. The Vectispinus is a new dino that can improve the viability of other nearby Spinosaurids. When using its Courage Roar, it will buff all nearby Spinosaurid creatures with 25% attack, 25% defense, and 25% movement speed. And this is everything in the Spinosaurid class, so that includes other Vectispinus, alongside Spinosaurus, Baryonyx, and upcoming modded creatures such as Paleoarch's Imperiosaurus or Garuga's Suchomimus. This buff works for all modded and vanilla dinos so long as they are child classes of the Spinosaurid family. Not only that, but the Vectispinus itself is a decent damage dealer too, and when equipped with a heavy artillery saddle, it can also shoot artillery shells. So when actually ridden, this can deal devastating damage from a distance where you are safe, and obliterate ads and bosses themselves. At number 3, we have the ARK Horizons Suchomimus by GigaRaptor. By itself, the Suchomimus isn't quite as powerful as the other creatures on this list. However, it makes up for it in the form of 2 support buffs. The first one is that its Courage Roar will buff all nearby allies for 10% increased damage. This buff isn't hampered by class or species or anything of the like, it is a straight 10% buff to all nearby allies. Additionally, the Suchomimus itself will do a claw swipe that, when inflicted on targets including bosses, will cause the enemies to take 5% increased damage from all sources, stacking up to 20% increased total damage. So if you were to use multiple Suchomimus, it will stack up this debuff faster and cause bosses to take increased damage faster. Alternatively, just have the one and it will still be enough to keep up uptime in addition to buffing all nearby creatures. And with it itself being a part of the Spinosaurid family, it does indeed also get buffed by number 4's Vectispinus as well, which should help for its own damage and survivability. And just for the cherry on top, both the Suchomimus and Vectispinus will use their buffing roars by themselves even without an active rider. At number 2, we have the Eocarcharia, also by Tristan's Modding. While the Eocarcharia itself is more like a powerful Allosaurid, its main utility and use for supporting other dinosaurs is in the consumables it produces in its inventory. Passively over time, the Eocarcharia will produce 5 types of mushrooms, all of which can be used to create custom stews which can buff both players and dinosaurs alike when consumed. The custom foods include a speed stew, which increases movement speed by 20% for 300 seconds on the dino or player that consumes it, a strength stew that increases damage dealt by 15% but reduces defense by 15% for 600 seconds, and likewise a defense stew which increases defense by 15% but reduces damage dealt by 15% for 600 seconds, and finally the health stew, which grants the Argentavis scavenger healing for 30 seconds. So overall, you could apply one or more of these stews onto each of your boss dinos just before an encounter or even during if you could, and allow them to deal even more damage or have higher survivability or self-healing. Now of course the downside is that is a lot of stew to manually feed to a lot of creatures if you're playing solo. However, all of this said and done is only looking at it from a boss environment. It should be pointed out that these consumables can be used anywhere and at any time, remotely, not requiring the Eocarcharia, but just on any creature you are riding. This means that just being out and about roaming or doing caving, or genuinely any activity there is, means that these stews can really come in handy, whether using a defense stew to soak turrets or using a speed stew to outrun a alpha. There's some very surprising versatility involved in this, and it's quite easy to think of it only in the context of bosses, but in reality, these stews can be used anywhere at any time, and that really does make the Eocarcharia quite the valuable tame to have indeed. And at number 1 for our top support dino, we have the ARK Edition's Deinotherium by Garuga123. The one caveat to the Deinotherium compared to other entries in this list is that to really get the maximum potential, you will need to add up to 4 of them into your army. However, to gain this maximum potential is certainly not wasted, as the Deinotherium themselves also do hefty damage. A singular lone male Deinotherium itself can buff all nearby allies for 15% damage and increase stamina regeneration, whereas for every female Deinotherium nearby, they will each give a 5% defense buff that can stack up to 3 times, which means when having the maximum potential of 1 male and 3 females, altogether these will provide your army with up to 15% damage dealt and 15% defense boost to all nearby allies. The Deinotheriums can also sport a double stomp attack which bypasses armor such as rock golems, which can especially be useful for fighting modded bosses alongside future vanilla bosses such as the Fjorda boss Steinborn. And as mentioned earlier, the overall output of the Deinotherium itself also matches that of other boss creatures, so there's really no reason not to include these guys into your army because they themselves also do massive damage. As a result of this, it's fair to assume that the Deinotherium will not only be self-sufficient out in open world content, but it also means that any dino you add with them, or if you add them with any other dino, everything will be benefited and everything will deal substantially more damage and become even tankier. Which in the end makes Deinotherium a powerfully offensive support dino. And that is our top 5 support dinos for ARK Survival Ascended. What do you think of this list? Is there anything you'd add to it? Or perhaps we've missed out on any mods available on the CurseForge platform? Please feel free to let us know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more of these, like and subscribe for more ARK Ascended mods videos, and keep an eye out for future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.